This is my anchor point on earth. This is where I came at a very young age, began to put my early life together, my teen years together.
Long before the highway connected the upper Lochsa with the outside world, before Lewis and Clark's crossing became a long, distant memory, Bud Moore roamed these parts as the forest ranger, the one responsible for the Lochsa, part of the Selway and the North Fork of the Clearwater, and all the country in between.
My job was to steward this country, to know it better than anybody else. I had to learn it to do the job that I had to do. As a ranger, I felt awfully free. It wasn't somebody else allowing or disallowing me to do things. I was here, and I knew that this big job was mine. And I looked in the mirror every night and say, how did you do today? I didn't look and say, what's the supervisor thinking?
It was a time when folks in the Forest Service wore the white hats, when they could do no wrong.
Norman McLean used to say they went out in the valleys and hired a guy that could whip everybody else in the valley. That's the way they picked a ranger. Well, I think he overstated that, but there is some truth to that. What they did was they tried to get the best woodsmen, the best people could take care of the forest at the time. That's the key. There's somebody got to tie this all together with a good understanding of the place, or you're not going to come out with a very good result when it comes to stewarding the land out there.
Bud remembers the 1960s and 70s when things began to change for the Forest Service, when charges of clear-cutting and over-harvesting began to tarnish the agency's reputation.
I called it the timber cut syndrome. I could recognize what was happening to us real well. The budget would come out from a district. They'd say, tell us what you need to do this, this, and this, run that district, but be sure you cut this much timber. And so no matter what we did, the rangers had to try to crank out a certain amount of timber. And so that's where the mistrust began. I just feel strongly that poor timber management practices created more wilderness than all the wilderness people put together. Because when they saw that, they couldn't buy that. It was too rough, too quick. Leaders in the Forest Service torn apart, people that loved the land, and yet they still were trying to get that wood out. And they were damaging other values, and they knew it. This land has some broken pieces. The grizzlies are gone, and that we've lost something great in this ecosystem, and it won't ever be whole till we get them back. The sea-run fish are hanging on, but they're endangered, as you know, several species of sea-run fish. If we want to keep the place whole, we've got to work on that too. So there are some broken linkages, big ones, that go clear to the ocean. So I guess we got lots of work to do.
Bud's career took him to the highest levels of government, to Washington, D.C., where he was instrumental in getting the Forest Service to accept fire as a valuable tool. He was also one of the first to push for something called ecosystem management, a highfalutin term that even today no one completely understands.
The challenge is to go in there and take what we have to take care of ourselves as a society, and still keep all the connectivity, all of the stuff that's important to make that thing stay alive and function. I see this, what's going on today, as the biggest change in my lifetime, and the thing we don't have yet is the public trust. Just how in the blazes can a ranger run a show with the public fighting each other, the public he's supposed to be working for? The lumber industry, the outfitting industry, you just go on and name them, the environmental groups. How can you do it? This is a democracy, and you're just stalemated until we join up a little bit. Working together works, and that's what I'd like to see, and that's what I'm trying to represent today, is in whatever way I can.
Bud Moore has lived long enough to see the forest for the trees, but he's hardly a tree hugger. He believes passionately in managing forests and in cutting timber. In fact, if you visit Bud, chances are you'll see him practicing what he preaches, on his own 80 acres of land just over the Montana border.
The challenge here really is to get some income back from our land. It's just kind of like a farm. I couldn't keep this place if I couldn't get something back from it. So this is the centerpiece really where most of the payoff comes.
Over the years, Bud and his neighbors have developed a landscape analysis of their respective properties to help them understand the interrelatedness of things.
I think nature has, over eons of time, come up with a scheme that we just can't beat. And so we work with that, but we're part of this thing too, and we have to take something out of it too. We have to survive. And so right in there is the challenge. So what I do in our forest, I try to figure out all those natural processes that are going on. You know, the conventional forestry would prune up those trees to have a perfect job, let more light in for seedling. Well, what about the old bull elk that's coming down through here in the winter? It's a critical movement area. He's reaching for that black moss. Well, why not leave him some, you know, and some branches for it to hang on. Little things like that I think are important. I do some of them that I don't know how important they are, although I know there's a reason for them.
This man, who has lived longer than most and who continues to live life on his own terms, has written a book about land ethics in the Bitterroot Mountains. Part history, part philosophy, part autobiography, about a life lived well in the Lochsa.
I look back at this as a great adventure, a great part of my life, and these mountains are part of who I am, really. I've been very fortunate in that I can look back. See, I'm 85 years old, and I started here in 1935, so I can look back 50 years. It doesn't seem like I should be that historical from my own point of view, but I guess that's the way it is. I see it in the eyes of the young people that I talk to and visit and see, like the young lady that just went by. You know, I'm old Bud. Way back somewhere, another world. It's great to live like that. I count my blessings every day.